With a brand new baby in the house, things are looking just a tiny bit different here in our home as I make food for my family, tend to the garden, and continue making my home with one more child in the mix. I'm not sure how summer was in your neck of the woods, but here we had a dry summer all the way until August, and then it started to rain, which was very welcome. Obviously, it was a little bit too late for a lot of things. Luke did tend to our garden pretty well and continue watering it, so it's doing well. But it would have been nice to have that rain just a little sooner, but we are really enjoying the coolness that it brings. I have a lot of things to tend to here in the kitchen. I took some time to rest after having the baby, and as usual, I always think, oh, I'll try to lay low just a little bit longer this time since I'm getting older. I've had more children. And I get so antsy. I know people say you just have to, it's a long-term investment. I agree. But mentally for me, just being able to move about my day in the way that I did before having the baby really just helps me. I like the way the baby seamlessly integrates into our family. There is that rest period, so I guess it's not really seamlessly, but it just feels so much better whenever I'm able to get back up, bring the kids to the pool, take them places, tend to my home. My sister and I have already gone to the fair with the kids, taken them to a water park. It just really feels good to be able to do that. I do try to pay attention to my body and make sure that there's no signs that I should continue to take it really easy. If there is a day like that, I try to get in bed a little bit earlier with him. And of course, some things move a little bit slower, but it really is just so different having your 8th baby versus having your first. Now, honestly, for me, the transition from 0 to 1, I get asked this all the time. What was the hardest transition? For me, 0 to 1 was the most mind-blowing because everything about my life was different before having kids. And then after having them, just the things that you have to adjust and figure out how to keep doing what you're doing, but with a baby. I found that really challenging. For me, after I found my stride, adding 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 were all very similar. Now, of course, there's always a transition period, but it is just so much smoother the more kids that I've had. I just know what to expect, especially having 6 little baby boys in a row that have all really been very similar in size, similar when they came around the same time gestation wise. I feel like I have done this exact thing so many times. I figured out which baby wraps I like. I figured out how I prefer to sleep with a baby. Now, of course, there are certain things that can change between child to child, but for me, this transition, thankfully, has been very easy. And if anything, I've had to hold myself back from wanting to jump into stuff as opposed to feeling like I can't, just feeling like maybe I shouldn't, but not necessarily that I can't. That's all due to a very uncomplicated birth. Everything just, thank the Lord, has gone so well. Today, among a lot of other things, we need to get some things preserved from the garden. We did sort of neglect things because we had meals coming our way. Life was just a little bit disrupted, a little different for a couple of weeks. So we let things get away from us. What we're going to try today is freeze drying some tomatoes, making some tomatoes into a pasta sauce, and then canning some. I have never actually tried freeze drying the tomatoes. We have some thoughts and ideas about what we might do. I also want to lacto ferment peppers. We had lacto fermented peppers in our refrigerator for, I'd say, at least 6 months. They are so wonderful throughout the winter because they taste great in soups and chilies. Luke and I especially love that. But first, of course, I need to make a flower arrangement. I know I do this all the time on this channel, but I get so inspired by all the beautiful things in summer, and no arrangement is like the last. Sure, they can be similar, but each one is unique, and I always snap a picture with my phone because whenever it's winter, I love looking back at all the different beautiful things and how this place just comes alive in the summertime. This arrangement's extra special because it has our first dahlias from the garden. I had this one really large one and decided that it needed its own special vase to showcase its beauty. I also threw in herbs like thyme and sage into this arrangement. Homemaking with a newborn means lots of little breaks throughout the day to nurse the baby. I really appreciate those anyway. It's a wonderful excuse to slow down. Taking a break from my homemaking to tell you about today's sponsor, Kiwico. In our home, we love Kiwico crates. They have something for every age group, and whenever they come, my kids always beg to do them right away. They have activities and projects that help kids learn something. Now, they have a Panda Crate line, which is for ages 0 to 36 months, so it works perfectly for our toddler. Today's Panda Crate was great for his age because it challenges him, but also it's something that he can do to fit the little blocks onto the right piece. I also love that Panda Crates come with a booklet for parents that help you to figure out how to best utilize it for each age group. So for my toddler, there were several different ways that we could use this crate to help him learn and explore. And of course, he finds them really, really fun. I love that with Panda Crates, everything comes in the box that you need to complete it. So I'm not running around to stores looking for something. It's something that my kids can learn from, but also a lot of them can do it on their own. And so it's something that on a rainy day can keep them busy and productive learning. The Kiwico Panda Crate is a subscription that helps babies explore new skills as they grow and discover the world around them. With the Panda Crate, families get play products and resources tailored specifically for the baby's developmental stage, delivered every other month. Each crate contains 2 months worth of products and information that is designed and delivered specifically for that 2-month stage of your baby's development. If you just want a single crate or you're not ready to subscribe, Kiwico also does offer a variety of individual crates over at the Kiwico store. We love Kiwico and the Panda Crate. It's perfect for our toddler. He loves it too. Kiwico is offering 50% off your first month using my link kiwico.com/farmhouseyt and with the coupon code Farmhouse. I will also leave it linked in the description box below. I did a homemaking video right before I had Victor, and I bleached these slipcovers to make them look pretty again. And I mentioned that I always have this moment with my slipcovers where I think it's time for new chairs. Well, I did that again. Even though they were white, they had so many spots that have torn and ripped over the years as I've washed them and hung them up to dry repeatedly for 6 years. Also, I never took the time whenever I first made them to serge all the edges and do the things that you should to make something last 6, 7 years, a decade in your home. So I hired my oldest daughter. Yes, I actually paid her by the hour to fix them. And she did a wonderful job. She went through, fixed every little tear, just brought them back to how they were whenever I first made them. And yet again, I'm ready to not throw them away. She extended their life once again so that they will live here in this home for a few more years. At some point, I want to add color, but right now, they work so great and they actually look good now that she has repaired them for me. When we get overwhelmed with something in the kitchen, well, there's really 2 things that we very easily can get overwhelmed with. One is tomatoes in the summer because I always plant too many tomatoes. And the other is milk because we have a dairy cow. And my defaults for those are pasta sauce for the tomatoes and yogurt for the milk. That's kicking the can down the road in a lot of ways as far as the yogurt goes. We actually got to this point this morning where we had a gallon of kefir made and 2 gallons of yogurt, and we were out of jars and Luke was going to go milk. Normally in that situation, I would throw a gallon of milk quickly into the Instant Pot. That would free up 2 jars for the morning. But when you already have that much yogurt, at some point, you're gonna have to actually just consume large quantities of yogurt. And so before he milked today, he actually went and brought milk to my sister's house. Normally we're able to stay on top of things. Again, we got behind because on a homestead, the way that things move, if you take 2 weeks out of that and just don't do anything, you're going to have this bottleneck in the system. So as long as I continue to make cheeses and ricotta and yogurt, and I'm in the kitchen making smoothies and making sure everybody drinks all of their milk, then we're good to go. But the moment that I step out for 2 weeks and people are bringing us meals, so we're not consuming as much of our own food that we usually do, this is where we run into problems. And that same thing has happened with the tomatoes. And so I'm making pasta sauce because it really cooks everything down, and we use a pasta sauce in abundance. And you can only eat so many sliced tomatoes and fresh salsa. You can't really get it to go in bulk whenever you're eating it that way. So I threw a bunch of tomatoes and peppers and onions in a pot, cooked it down, added some herbs, and we will enjoy that for an easy spaghetti night or on pizzas. Super easy way to use up a whole bunch of tomatoes. Lately, Victor has been going in between my wrap. Sometimes when he's asleep, I will lay him down. That doesn't usually last super long. Sometimes a big sibling will sit in the kitchen and hold him for a bit. He goes between a lot of different things. I will say that laying down isn't his favorite, which makes him a very normal newborn. I really do love baby wearing. It's such a short season in life. I wear them almost exclusively for 6 months, and then around 6 or 7, maybe 8 months, somewhere in there, I start to get the baby down for naps and start fitting them more into a schedule with set nap times and a bedtime. So it's just such a short, sweet, special time. And I really enjoy doing it this way. I'm sure that if I laid him down awake as opposed to sleeping, that he'd stay asleep longer when I actually do lay him down. But I'll try laying him down sometimes, and then he'll fuss or somebody will be loud and I get him back in the wrap to go about my homemaking. At this age, there is no schedule, and I think that is just perfectly fine. Luke and I are planning a date night tonight to talk about our fall schedule. We do this every year whenever we're embarking on a new homeschool season, and it's always a new season. So last year, when we had 7 kids, Theo was taking a nap. I had him on a schedule because he was 1 last year whenever school started, and he was taking his morning nap still. This year, he's only taking 1 nap in the afternoon, and then I also have a newborn. So there's going to be 4 little boys who will need care during school. And so we're going to sort out how we're going to handle that. As many of you know, we do this internet business thing full time. And so Luke and I are home together, which is a very unique, special situation that I'm very thankful for. When I had my first 4 kids and homeschooled, actually 5 kids before he came home, I did all of that myself, and there are unique challenges with all of that. But because we do share a lot of the responsibilities around here, we're going to have a meeting to figure out how we're going to structure school this year, what role he'll be taking, what role I'll be taking. It changes so often based on kids and seasons. And I have some thoughts. I have some ideas. I'm sure he does too. So I'll report back. Each year I always share what we're doing on here. What I did 2 years ago was very different than what we did last year. And I almost feel like it might be shifting back this year to how it was 2 years ago, just because it's almost a similar situation whenever it toggles back and forth between having a 2-year-old toddler, a 1-year-old that takes the morning nap, which means that they're out of the mix during the morning school time. Usually accompanied with the 2-year-old toddler means we also have a newborn, and we're swinging back into that currently. Another thing that makes this year different than last is last year we had 2 kids that were really struggling to read, and now they're both reading. And so what was very much a grind last year will be a little bit easier this year, and we can maybe focus on some more fun, delight-directed learning things. Okay, I just finished making my fermented peppers. If you're intimidated by making fermented vegetables, essentially you make a saltwater brine and pour it over cut vegetables and then just allow it to ferment at room temperature. It really is that simple. I know we get really intimidated by it, but it's pouring salt water over cut vegetables. I mean, that's seriously it. If you want some more details, you have some questions, I do have a blog post where I talk all about fermenting vegetables. So you can just go over to farmhousehomeboon.com and search fermented vegetables or search cucumbers, peppers. There's a lot of different tutorials on there, but essentially it's always just putting a saltwater brine over vegetables. And it's just such an easy way to preserve things. Now I am making my sourdough skillet. For my new sourdough book, I am testing variations of this recipe. So I am doing a chicken, sweet potato, maple, thyme version. The name won't be that long. That's just what I'm calling it right now. Of the sourdough skillet. If you're unfamiliar, a sourdough skillet is basically a meat and vegetable base down in a cast iron skillet. And then I mix up sourdough starter, eggs, baking powder, butter, and salt. It makes this frothy, bubbly topping, and then pour it over top and then bake it so that there's a bread component on top of a meat and vegetable component, and then I spread it with cheese. So you can do a million different variations of that exact same dinner. And it's one of those one pot wonders, easy, quick, all the food groups to get on the table. So a good one for back to school as you're getting busier and need something easy. One of my favorite ways to use up milk in our home is by making mozzarella. I like making wheels of cheese. That's been really fun. But with mozzarella, it is literally so fast because I do that easy method where I just stir the curds together and stretch the cheese on the back of a spoon. I don't need any molds. It's just so fast. And then I leave the whey in the pot and make a homemade ricotta from the whey. It's just a really streamlined, fast, easy way to use it up. But one thing we've had trouble doing is figuring out what to do with all of our ricotta. Before, it was something you put in lasagna or I'd spread it on a pizza crust, but you can only do that so much for the amount of ricotta that we're getting. I was recently scrolling Pinterest and I saw a few sweet recipes with ricotta. I saw making ricotta cakes. We also tried ricotta ice cream. That was absolutely delicious. And then it popped up on YouTube a recipe for ricotta einkorn donuts from Shay Elliott. So I wanted to try those because it seemed like another really delicious way to use ricotta in a sweet application, and these truly did not disappoint. She fried them in tallow, so that's what I did, but they would also, I'm positive, taste fabulous in lard or coconut oil. We are currently out of lard, but that will be coming this fall, and so we'll be trying that. I want to add some pumpkin and pumpkin spice to them and then toss them in cinnamon sugar. We've made these again since this time. I think we've made them 3 times now. They come together really easy. One thing that I learned after the first time was to put much smaller amounts into the oil. The first time I put too big of amounts, and so I burned the outsides but had gooey insides. So now I just take a spoon, just a regular small spoon, and just put small spoonfuls into the hot oil. They don't have to be shaped perfectly or anything to turn out great. They sort of become circular even when you don't use a circular scoop. They're lovely. I'm wanting to do lots of variations of this basic recipe. I have been gathering together ingredients for another variety of my sourdough skillet. I'm going to call this one Farmer's Market Sourdough Skillet. Of course, because it's a recipe for the book, I'm getting all the proportions right. Normally, I would put a bunch of stuff in the skillet and then measure out my sourdough topping, put it on top, and bake it. You can do any meat, any veggie that you have, but I'm trying to come up with an exact, actual recipe for the book, of course. So I did parsley, zucchini, tomatoes, peppers, and onions, and I measured out the butter, the salt, all of that, the parsley. Feel free to have freedom with this. It can be a staple in your home because you can make winter versions where you do different root vegetables. Then you can, of course, do like this summer version where we have all of these beautiful fresh ingredients. And then after topping it with the sourdough topping and baking it for a bit, you can also create a little bit of variety with the type of cheese. So you could do a Parmesan, a cheddar, a Gouda, whatever it is that you have. I even like the idea of doing a pizza variety of this. In the bottom part, you could do mushrooms, peppers, onions, sausage, and then toss it with like the homemade pasta sauce I just made, and then putting on the sourdough topping, which would almost act like the flavor of the crust, and then putting some mozzarella on top. Of course, fresh basil would be really wonderful in that bottom part as well. You can get creative and experiment with it. I've always just used this as a way to throw together an easy dinner in my kitchen. And now I'm thinking through some very specifics that I can direct people more precisely for the book. This book has been quite the project. We had a photographer come over and take a lot of the lifestyle shots for this. So me kneading the bread, stretching and folding the bread, shaping it, doing some shots around the farm and the garden and the family. This book is going to be such a fun project and I cannot wait to see it in print. Right now, this means that I'm doing everything sourdough in my kitchen to test and prepare. But whenever it's all done and it's sitting on the shelf and I have these exact measurements, I think it's going to be something that a lot of people are going to really enjoy having in their kitchens and in their homes. All of these recipes can be found over on farmhouseonboone.com. They've been there for years, a lot of them, with the printable varieties. So you don't have to wait for the book to get these recipes. Some of the variations that I'm doing right now will be exclusively in the book, but the basic recipes are over on the blog. That's why this book can come together in about a year. I don't know exactly when it's coming out, but it can come together quickly because I've already been working on and testing this stuff for about 5 years. There are some new things I'm wanting to add, and then testing the weight measurements instead of just having cup measurements is a whole thing. And then there's some photos that I still needed because I couldn't find the high res versions or the originals from when I originally took them on the blog. It's work getting it all together. But a lot of this has been years in the making with these recipes that I've been working on for so long. I've had the sourdough starter in my kitchen for more than a decade, like probably 12 or 13 years now. So this has been something I've enjoyed doing since my mid-20s. And now I'm just trying to pull all of that knowledge and testing and photos and development together into this book. So with the home garden, one thing that I've noticed is it's not really practical to do 1 or 2 big canning days, because then you will have several tomatoes that are already bad and just not enough. It's a constant process of getting the tomatoes that are perfectly ripe out of the garden, doing these small batch canning days. If there's a solution for that, please let me know. My current solution is just to leave the canner out in our kitchen all throughout the rest of the summer and throwing a few batches in each week. Doesn't really take a whole lot of supplies. So to me, that's as practical as anything. I am removing the peels just because I know that I'll be using these tomatoes in things like chilies and soups, and I'd prefer the peels to be off of them for that. By putting them in boiling water and then into ice cold water, this is the exact same way that you easily peel peaches. The skins just come right off. And then I am tossing each quart with a couple of tablespoons of lemon juice. This provides the right amount of acidity to make the canning safe, and then some salt for flavor. I put them in my water bath canner for 45 minutes, and then they seal after sitting on the countertop for a little bit, and they are good to go. Now I am straining off my ricotta. This is a constant task in the kitchen, and then removing my freeze-dried tomatoes, which are now finished. I'm just crumbling them into a jar and packing them tight. I've heard that this works as a good alternative for tomato paste because all of the liquid is removed. We also want to try making a sourdough cracker with it, and then it would give a lovely red color. At least that's the thought. I'd hoped to have tried that by now, but we haven't, so it might make it into a future video. I'm going to hang up my ricotta in a flour sack towel to get the rest of the way out, and then we will have more ricotta to put in donuts or ice cream or lasagna. Thank you so much for joining me for one of my very first weeks of homemaking with our 8th baby. As a newborn, it's always an adjustment, so thank you for coming along with me.